QuickBooks Pro Plus Desktop 2022 OneNote Presentation Preferences. Get ready because we bookkeeping pros are moving up the hilltop with QuickBooks Pro Desktop 2022. Here we are in OneNote. If you have access to OneNote, would like to follow along, note we're in the icon left-hand side, topic introductions down in the 1120 Preferences tab. Also note when using OneNote, take a look at the Immersive Reader tool. Our topic introductions also in the text area with the same name, same number, but with transcripts. Transcripts that can be translated into multiple different languages and either listened to or read in them. Closing the icon. Also note that we're thinking about the topic introductions in OneNote. We'll have the same name and number in the presentation area. Topic introductions designed to give a short overview of the topic, provide screenshots and links where applicable, as well as general accounting information to supplement the information we'll look at within the QuickBooks software. Here we're looking at the preferences. When we're looking at the presentation, the longer presentation, we're going to go over a quick overview of the preferences, noting that in this first half of the problem, we're going to just do an overview of the preferences. In the second half of the course, then we'll go into the preferences in much more detail. Reason being is that many of the preferences are going to be most applicable for when you first set up the company file. And then some of those preferences you might change if you go into a company and you start out the company file already having been set up. So oftentimes when you look at a course, they'll go through the preferences up front, given the fact that that's kind of a setup process. But again, when you go into a company, once the settings are already been set, then you're probably not going to go over the preferences in as much detail. So we'll go over them briefly here. In the second half of the course, when we create another company file, we'll go over them in more detail. If you don't have access to the QuickBooks software and you just want to look at the screenshots in order to follow along with the presentation, you can follow along with these screenshots here. This is how you get into the preferences file, the edit drop-down preferences at the bottom. There are a whole lot of preferences that are going to be listed on the left-hand side of the preferences tab here. And then usually there'll be two tabs up top for the My Preferences and the company preferences, not always having any information in one of the two preferences, as here the My Preferences doesn't have anything in it generally for the accounting information. And then you got most of these listed out here on the screenshot. So in the accounting area, you got the company preferences. You can go over all the preferences for the accounting preferences. The bills, here are going to be the bills preferences. We've got the calendar preferences. We've got the checking area and the checking area preferences, the desktop view. Then we've got the finance charges, the general. This is one of the areas you might more likely to be going. This is usually kind of like the default area when you open up the preferences, if nothing else is open, to go into the general item. And then the general for the My Preferences and company preferences, trading off between those two items. Integrated applications, if we have other applications that are integrated. Inventory, these items must be turned on in order to have the inventory set up. Once again, if you already are working with QuickBooks, they will be, turned on if you're using inventory. When you're setting that up, you got to go in and make sure that those are turned on from the start. We'll do that in the second half of the course and make sure that is the case when we start a new company file. The jobs and estimate typically will be applicable if it's a job cost type of system. Multiple currencies, if you're doing transactions with different currencies and you're receiving different currencies and stuff like that, you could turn that on. We have a whole nother course on multiple currencies if you want to look at that in more detail. The payments information, we've got the payroll and employees. This is a whole nother section. We have a whole course on payroll in and of itself. And then we've got the reminders, which can be useful. We'll go into those in more detail in the second half of the course. And then reports and graphs. We've got the sales and customers tab, the sales tax, which would be applicable if sales tax be applicable, which in the United States is a state and local issue. It'd be like a usage type of tax when you make the sale. Search information. Then we got the service connection. We've got the 1099, which are going to be things that you're going to have to think about reporting 1099s. That'll help you possibly to track the 1099 reporting. So we got those settings and the time and expenses. So we'll go over these in a little bit more detail in the presentation. You can use these screenshots in the second half of the course. We will then go into these in more detail as we set up a new company file.